Welcome back, friends. You are listening to the Juicebox Podcast. Erin's daughter was diagnosed 2 years ago. Her and her husband struggled at first with the diagnosis, asking why them. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. Don't forget, if you're a U.S. resident who has type 1 or is the caregiver of someone with type 1, visit t1dexchange.org/juicebox right now and complete that survey. It will take you 10 minutes to complete the survey, and that effort alone will help to move type 1 diabetes research forward. It will cost you nothing to help. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. I know that Facebook has a bad reputation, but please give the private Facebook group for the Juicebox Podcast a healthy once-over. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. The group now has 47,000 members in it. It gets 150 new members a day. It is completely free, and at the very least, you can watch other people talk about diabetes. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes and their MiniMed 780G system, designed to help ease the burden of diabetes management. Imagine fewer worries about missed boluses or miscalculated carbs, thanks to meal detection technology and automatic correction doses. Learn more and get started today at medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox. Today's podcast is sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox. You can get your diabetes supplies from the same place that we do. And I'm talking about Dexcom, Libre, Omnipod, Tandem, and so much more. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514.
Well, my name is Erin, and I'm talking to you today because my daughter, Kylee, was diagnosed with diabetes type 1 almost exactly 2 years ago.
How old is she now?
She is 10.
And she was diagnosed at 8.
So she was diagnosed actually 2 weeks after her 9th birthday.
I see. Okay. And you are American?
Yes.
You said the diabetes part. Like, do you know people who say the date backwards?
Oh,
You did.
yes. That's funny. I didn't even think about that.
You said
But, yeah,
it
no.
like you were charting it. Does that make sense?
Probably maybe in my mind, I do kind of that chronological order way I date things.
It was really
But,
interesting.
yeah.
Diabetes type 1. And I was like, oh,
Yes.
this is like a scene from Grey's Anatomy. This is very exciting.
Okay, well, I work in a dental field, so in my mind, that's kind of how I guess I classify things as well.
Very nice. I felt like I heard
Yeah.
that. That's all. Any other type 1 in the family or other autoimmune stuff?
No, so she was a surprise to us. We were blindsided. None of our family.
Okay.
We asked all the family and nobody in the immediate. We had a couple maybe type 2s and like my great-great-grandparents, but nobody in the near family. My mother-in-law is adopted and she does not know anything about her background, so there's a possibility there. But other than that, we were completely blindsided.
Got you. I understand. Okay. In hindsight now, when you look at your own health, do you see other autoimmune types of stuff like celiac or Hashimoto's or stuff like that?
No.
No. Okay. How many other kids, or no? One kid?
I do. I have 2. I have one other, and he's boy, and he's going to be 13 at the beginning of next year. So
Wow. Are you in like your late 30s?
I am.
Was that upsetting to you?
I don't know if I'm ready for it. I just turned 39, and I'm like, okay, hitting those 40s.
I just loved your response. You're like, I am. Yes. I how did you know? I look so young in person.
Right, exactly. I was
No,
like,
no.
dang it, he guessed. No.
So we have a bit of a short window for you today. So I'm going
Yes.
to do a little thing where I just kind of jump forward a little bit and ask you what it is that you were interested in coming on the podcast to talk about.
Well, so the reason why I kind of reached out to you was Kylie had it very interesting. She had a lot of things happen to her very quickly on top of her diabetes diagnosis. And I kind of wanted to talk to you, and in hindsight now, after it being 2 years, I hope that what I can tell people gives them a little ray of hope
Mm-hmm.
in all aspects, because we were in a huge slump for a while. Our life got turned upside down. So having no idea that type 1 was even a possibility, my daughter, all of a sudden, she's playing softball. She's very, very active. All of a sudden, she is tired. She's exhausted. You know, we are on her about, why can't you focus? Why can't you do all these things that she normally, would do? Because we were clueless.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up having a flood in our house, which we have no idea how, why, or what, but it took out her bedroom, it took out her bathroom, it took out the hallway. And that's how we found out. We had no idea about any of the other symptoms. They weren't a thought process whatsoever. And she started going to the bathroom every 20 minutes after they, pulled all the plumbing, pulled everything from our bathroom. And she was coming into our master bedroom, and every 20 minutes. I told my husband, I said, that's so strange. I said, maybe she has a UTI, maybe she has something. Again, type 1 diabetes was not on our radar. So we finally got her a doctor's appointment. And the day of the doctor's appointment, we had to drive 45 minutes to get there. And the doctor's a good personal friend. And she took her blood sugar and she's like, she's diabetic. We were like, I just cried because I was like, how? Like, how is this even possible?
Right.
So in our area, we had two choices. She was like, you can either stay here in this town and go to the hospital here, and they will fly you to one of the bigger cities. So I live in northern New Mexico. So my choice is either Denver, or you drive back home 45 minutes, and then they're going to fly you from your hospital to Albuquerque.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to decide, where do you want to have her endo appointments for the rest of her life, at least until she's 18. There was so much information. I was like, I'm doing what?
Yeah.
So we
How
decided.
often am I flying to Denver exactly?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. That's an 8-hour drive for us. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I don't, that commitment is a big commitment. Albuquerque is 3.5 hours. That's still a big commitment. We don't travel to Albuquerque very often.
And you don't at that point even understand, I would imagine, like, why is it why can't you help me? Like, why am I going somewhere else, right? Today's episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes, who is making life with diabetes easier with the MiniMed 780G system. The MiniMed 780G automated insulin delivery system anticipates, adjusts, and corrects every 5 minutes. Real-world results show people achieving up to 80% time in range with recommended settings without increasing lows, but of course, individual results may vary. The 780G works around the clock so you can focus on what matters. Have you heard about Medtronic's extended infusion set? It's the first and only infusion set labeled for up to a 7-day wear. This feature is repeatedly asked for, and Medtronic has delivered. 97% of people using the 780G reported that they could manage their diabetes without major disruptions of sleep. They felt more free to eat what they wanted, and they felt less stress with fewer alarms and alerts. You can't beat that. Learn more about how you can spend less time and effort managing your diabetes by visiting medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox.
Yeah, she was like, just so you know, there is absolutely no pediatric endocrinologist in this area. And I was like, what? Like, how do we not have that here? So we drove the 45 minutes back home, and my daughter's in the back seat just falling asleep. Like, she couldn't even keep her eyes open. Her blood sugar when we were at the doctor's was 500. And so they sent us back. And by the time we got to our local hospital, they had to go through all the protocol again, even though
It just
the
happened.
doctor called ahead.
Right.
And they were like, it's not reading on our, machine. We need to do blood work. So we sat in the hospital for almost 4 hours with little to no information. Our hospital is a small rural hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing we know, they're like, we're sending you to Albuquerque. And we're like, okay. And they're like, well, she's in DK, so we need to send you guys like now. So
can I ask a question? Had you sat there long enough that you could have driven to Albuquerque?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah. My husband was able to As I sat in the hospital, he was able to come home from work, change his clothes, come to the hospital, and hang out for another hour.
Mm.
And he works about 45 minutes out. So we were very frustrated. We were like, do you guys have any information? The nurse literally came in and was like, did the doctor tell you she's in DKA? We're like, no, nobody's told us anything. They took her blood, they left. We really haven't got anything. So she was air flighted out, and we went to that hospital, and they were on it. Long story short, we were there for 3 days. We got a lot of information and then, sent home.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been working on it. Our endo's been very happy with everything that we've been doing. Her first appointment, so when she was diagnosed, she was at 14 point something on her A1C is what they were averaging at the hospital.
Okay.
And then when we came back for her 3-month checkup, she was at 6.4.
When you look back, how long do you think this was going on for?
Honestly, to think about it, this time frame, last 2 years ago. So we had a family vacation around 4th of July. She had an all-star softball game that she was playing this weekend 2 years ago. So we think it was at least probably 4 months by what they're estimating the A1C. Okay. And just looking back at all the symptoms that she had. Little
markers that you saw along the way when you can look back at it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that I see and I process now that I really wonder about is she had a lot of abdominal pain months before we noticed, the thirst, the urination, all of that.
I would guess.
She would come in every night and be like, my stomach just hurts. And we're like, well, do you need to use the restroom? Mm. Maybe you're eating things that are, upsetting your stomach. And she would just be in knots, and then it would go away. And a couple days later, same thing. And then it went away, and we didn't think much of it.
Interesting. I wonder, I'm going to think about that and do a little research while you're talking on the stomach pain idea, because people bring it up all the time. I never really dig into it. So, okay. So what is the impact on her? How does she respond to this?
So, she has been a trooper. She does. So we're MDI. She's continued to be MDI. She does not want to pump. She does use a CGM. We did switch over to the G7, which she does really like due to the size of it. My daughter's only 72 pounds. She's very thin, very muscular. It slows her down. And when it slows her down, that's when she's like, I wish I didn't have diabetes.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Does she talk about it a lot?
She does. And we've been very blessed. She is willing to talk to other people about it. We have to, we want everybody to know so that if we can't watch her or see her, hopefully something ever happened to her, they would be aware. She has some great friends at school that have known from the beginning, and they're like, let's go to the nurse. You just are acting funny, or,
Yeah.
They are very receptive. But she's really good about letting people know and not being afraid to tell people about it, and she's like, yeah, I have diabetes.
I wasn't sure when you first said it. I thought when you said she was good at talking, she was open to talking to people about it. I thought you meant therapy, but you just meant friends in her life and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thankfully, as of right now, I don't see any mental frustration or load or anything that would need therapy. Again, she's 10, maybe when those hormones kick in and all that, she might need some help. But just speaking to people in general, or people asking her questions, she does her injections in public. People will look at her, and if people ask, she's just like, I have diabetes. So she's very vocal about it.
Okay. How are you guys handling it? You're the rest of your family, your other child, your husband, yourself.
My husband curses every day about it. He wants to know why her. I think I spent the first 3 months of this diagnosis just in tears every night, just streaming tears down my face, trying to figure out why, how. My son, he's done very well, but he definitely has told people, my sister is my parents' favorite.
Oh.
And they're like, well, why did you say that? My mother-in-law cornered me one day, and she's like, just so you know, your son asked me why Kylie is your favorite. And she's like, and I told him it's not that, she's their favorite. She just takes so much of their time. Some days it's really hard for him, but he takes it really well. And he's been honestly very awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he's picking up and learning and he's helping us when, we have to go to work and I need somebody with her for a short period of time. So,
It's interesting, isn't
but
it, that would feel like favoritism when to your daughter it feels like unwanted attention, probably. She's probably like, I don't want to be doing this,
yeah.
And
Yeah.
by the way, if something else, it would just be something else. In case you're wondering, you weren't going to get through parenting without the kid being upset about something. So you're fine. It's just, this is what it is.
True. Yeah.
I do think that no matter how well it seems that everyone else is adjusting, and I'm sure everyone will adjust, but there's still impacts. Like you can't just say, oh, there's no impacts.
Oh,
My son's 24 now, and he'll talk about like, you'd be on your way to do something, and then all of a sudden everything stopped. And then we stood there for 20 minutes, like making sure Arden was okay before we did something or that kind of thing. And that obviously stuck with him because he's older now and he still remembers it,
Yeah, we do a lot of, my husband will tell my son, today, me and you are going to go out on the boat and go fishing. Like your mom has Kylee, me and you are going to go spend time. And we're having to make a conscious effort to make sure that we spend time, which is horrible. It sounds horrible that you have to make a conscious effort just to spend time with one child. But we want him to know, especially now that he's mentioned it, that it's not that, she's our favorite. We tell her she's our favorite daughter, but, he's our favorite son. That's just how it is.
Well,
So-
you know what? If it wasn't this, it would have been softball or something else. You're always at softball. But, you would have just, trust me. Does he play a sport?
So he does. He's played baseball since he was little, but he's getting to that teenage year where he's picking and choosing. So he plays soccer as well. So he does a little bit of everything, and then he loves to bass fish. So we try to get him out there doing that as well.
Don't you live in a desert? Where's he bass fishing?
So I do live at a desert. We live in the high desert, technically.
Okay.
So we actually have a really nice, very large lake 45 minutes from us.
Oh, it's lovely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that the Great Flood is how you were able to figure out she had diabetes just because it diverted her to another bathroom. That was all, right?
Yeah, that is it. You were 100% correct.
That kid was peeing a ton before, but you didn't. Hey, is there a chance she flooded maybe she flooded the bathroom? Was that pee or water you saw going through the house?
Oh, yes. So we had the Great Flood, and then we had the tortilla incident where she bit a tortilla and took one bite out of it. So we had this little teeny tiny bite mark in it, and then the rest of it was floating in the toilet, in my toilet. And I was like, Kylee, did you eat a tortilla in the middle of the night? And she was like, no. We're like, what do you mean no? We're like, I have this soggy piece of evidence that I have to fish out of my toilet.
She was that hungry during the middle of the night that she...
Yes. And she didn't remember that she ate it. So she was coming to our room to go to the restroom. On top of it, she was stopping to get food and then not remembering the food. And then I was like, I need to get her a doctor's appointment really fast because I don't understand this.
She's sleepwalking tortillas. Before we move on, Erin, stomach pain prior to type 1 diagnosis can be due to several factors. This, of course, is from ChatGPT 4.0. DKA is the serious complication of unrelated diabetes, but blah, blah. I don't think it was that because it happened so far in the beginning. Gastroparesis, probably not that. I would think that she didn't have nerve damage from it, but high blood sugars, elevated glucose levels can affect the digestive system, leading to abdominal pain and discomfort. And then the other possibilities are pancreatitis and an infection. But I bet you it's just the high blood sugars creating that problem.
Yeah, that was kind of our thought process on that.
Yeah. Let me ask you another question about the time spent kind of crying and wondering why that happened to you and, that kind of to your daughter, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to come to an answer. So is that a thing you give away at some point, or do you still mull it over? I have always disliked ordering diabetes supplies. I'm guessing you have as well. It hasn't been a problem for us for the last few years, though, because we began using US Med. You can too. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514 to get your free benefits check. US Med has served over 1 million people living with diabetes since 1996. They carry everything you need, from CGMs to insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies and more. I'm talking about all the good ones, all your favorites. Libre 3, Dexcom G7, and pumps like Omnipod 5, Omnipod DASH, Tandem, and most recently, the iLet pump from Beta Bionics. The stuff you're looking for, they have it at US Med. 888-721-1514 or go to usmed.com/juicebox to get started now. Use my link, to support the podcast. That's usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514.
Oh, we definitely still mull it over. My husband's family is very Southern Baptist, and we sit there and we say, that there's a plan. There's a plan. We don't know the plan. And we try to not mull over too much about it, but it's very hard. It is very hard as a human to
Just accept it.
just accept it. Yeah. And knowing that this is going to affect her the rest of her life, the future that I saw for her is not the future that I see for her now, and that's frustrating.
Yeah, no, of course. We talked about this recently. First of all, I think Baptist Jesus's plan is just for you to spend a lot of money on CGMs and pumps and things like that over the years. They're like, what'll keep them working? What if they had more bills? We'll get them going. But quite seriously, like we were talking recently, about this idea of a normal life. Like, because we talk so much about you can live a normal life with diabetes, which I fully believe, right? And I watch my daughter do it. But no one's living a normal life. Like, do you know what I mean? Like what would normal be exactly? Because I think when people say normal, they mean unencumbered.
True.
You know what I mean? Like, I get to go do the thing I want to do. And that happens without me being sad or upset or inconvenienced or anything else. I just want to live a normal life. I think that's how a lot of people think about that phrase. And, I'm not going to say, obviously, like, oh, if it wasn't diabetes, it would be something else, because you get diabetes and something else. So then I love the positivity of you can live a normal life with diabetes, because I do believe that. But you also can't argue the fact that it's not normal.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's modified normal, new normal, call it whatever you want, right? But so I think you can live unencumbered with diabetes, if you understand some things and you have some luck and, decent insurance and like, et cetera, like all the things that you would need to accomplish that. But I would never disagree with anybody who said, like, this isn't normal or this isn't what I expected and I'm upset by it. The next step
100% not what we expected, not what we wanted for her. We didn't want her to have that extra junk to deal with.
Right.
Our thought is, as a female, my thought is she better find a partner that's willing to step up because it takes a lot. And I hope that somebody will do that for her, when she gets to that stage in her life. As for everything else, we want her to live very normally. We keep everything very normally. She is in all the sports that she was before. We've had to get extra help past our endo. We've listened to your podcast. I mean, every ounce of information that we could absorb to allow her to have everything as normal and as pre-diabetes, everything as before.
Pre-flood, we'll call it.
Just have that extra little, pre-flood. We have, everything that is done prior to. And we just tried to tell her, you have to just take care of beaties first.
Yeah.
Always beaties first. But the rest of the time, be normal.
Yeah.
We want her to be normal and enjoy her life like a normal 10-year-old kid.
And I think what that means is don't wallow, maybe. And wallow is a bad word because it makes it sound like you're doing it on purpose, but I don't mean it like that. I mean, don't stay in this part, which is really listen, what does it matter if you break up with your boyfriend when you're, 16, or you lose a job when you're 35 or whatever? Like, life's going to go poorly a number of times. You can't stay in that spot, right? You have to keep moving forward. There are all these platitudes you could use to like make this idea, but you just can't stay here in this and just keep re-adjudicating. This isn't fair. You know. Also, I did enjoy your point about a partner. You said as a girl, and I wondered what you meant by that, but because I kind of think no matter what, but I also don't have the experience of having to date 17 boys before I find a decent one.
Right.
But I think there are women like that too. Like, I think we mean like find an emotionally mature, reasonable person who's giving of themselves and willing to shoulder another person's burden. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And so what I mean by as a girl is, for me as a woman, the world is it may be, I have a lot of rights and things like that, but I still need a a husband or a partner that is stable, that, will and can take care of me, because there's a lot of things that I can't do. I think about if and when my husband becomes that age, he's much larger than me. So I'm going to struggle to help take care of him. So I want her to find somebody that is able-bodied, mentally stable, that can physically and emotionally take care of her.
Yeah.
Because we won't always be here to do that for her.
That's that's what I was trying to get to. That's the feeling you're having, that I have to live forever now feeling.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to die before she is, because we will be taking care of her forever. We've already told her we'll just blow out the other side of the house and refurnish it for her and her husband, and they can live with us the rest of their life.
That'll be lovely.
We'll take care of her.
Don't flush the toilet too much, though, because the plumbing's not great.
Hey, the plumbing is good.
Oh, now it is. Yeah, sure. Now,
yeah.
Your plumbing and your $15,000 home equity loan, I imagine, that you have now. It's nice to think about. Also, I think honest of you and kind of you to say out loud, because I can hear in your voice as you're talking, you don't want to say to people, I need help because I'm a woman. Like, that's not your intention, but size is an issue at some points, and could be with help once people. I'm literally watching a family member go through this right now, where older people, the husband deteriorated before the wife, and she really can't manage what needs to be managed.
Mm-hmm. And this is something that she's going to have the rest of her life.
Right.
And, it worries me. I want her to have somebody that will be able to take care of her, because I know I won't be able to.
Yeah.
And I think that's all that I really am getting at. But yeah,
Can I take a slight, not a complete left turn, but just a slight left turn, because I'm interested. In public, do you feel more comfortable when your husband's with you?
Yes.
You do? For personal safety reasons?
Yes.
Okay. But do you consider yourself like a worrisome person? Like, oh my God, something bad's going to happen? Or no, it just feels like common sense?
I was not a worrisome person until my children were.
Ooh.
All I want to do is protect them.
Erin, you broke up a little bit. You weren't a worrisome person before your children were born? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Not worrisome. And then when they were born, I just became a nervous wreck. And that's one of the things with Kylie's diabetes, that I know that I worry about everything with her.
Okay. Is that the mom thing that kicks in, do you think? Like, I gotta keep everybody alive now. Like, you never thought about that before the babies came flying out?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely that mom instinct kicking in, that, this world is crazy, and I want my children to be safe. And with that just comes in that anxiety and things like that. And I know that if my husband's there, at least there's two set of eyes on, our children, and it's not just me.
Mm-hmm. And that feeling grew once the diabetes came.
Oh, yes.
To kind of incorporate that idea of, what if she gets low and we're not here? What if she can't afford something and we're not here? That kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we all have that feeling, by the way. Seriously.
Yep. I looked at all of our stuff, and I thankfully had some life insurance that I purchased for her when she was like 2 years old.
Yeah.
And they told me, they're like, do not ever let us not know that your bank account has changed, like the account numbers have changed, because you don't want this to lapse, because now she can't ever get life insurance because she's diabetic.
And that's something. Yeah, I remember, listen, I'm not planning the great takeover or anything like that, but we're saving money as we're getting older, right? And when we spoke to somebody about how to manage it, they were like, well, what are your goals for the money? And we were like, we would like to leave it to our kids. And they were like, yeah, but for you. And we were like, our daughter has type 1 diabetes. Like, so we would like her to, I don't want to, I'll be dead, so I guess it wouldn't matter, but it would matter to her, and it would still matter to me if I could see myself in that scenario. I don't want her to be 40 or 50 years old and like ever have a moment where she's like, I can't afford insulin. I can't get an insulin pump. I can't, whatever things technology is going to look like down the road. And then the pressure of, if I leave her money, how do I not, back to your original point about your son, like, how do I not leave an equal amount to my son? Like, is the last thing I want him to think after I'm gone is that he cared about her more than me? You know what I mean?
Those things are always a thought in the back of your mind, and you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
it's hard being a parent. All I want
Sucks.
is what's best for them, and it's so hard.
Erin, without this diabetes, you could have ignored all these big life questions forever.
I know, and I could always just joke, be like, "Yeah, I don't like either of you guys. That's why I
Yeah,
didn't leave you
you
any
guys
money."
suck. And you know what? If you don't like the way that sounds, just get a good job because you're gonna need therapy. And I'm not paying for it. And you could have just joked your way through it like everybody else does. And but instead now it's like a real omnipresent, honest to God issue in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, fun
Well, if you
times.
don't mind, I wanted to tell you one other. Like I
Go.
said, it's been a little dark and gray for us for the last 2 years, and we feel like we're finally coming out. So I just wanted to tell you. So, along with the diabetes, so she was diagnosed in October. Then July of last year, she ended up having a appendicitis that was undiagnosed.
Oh,
So the abdominal pain, all of those issues were, in hindsight, we're like, man, what is going on? But she ended up having an undiagnosed appendicitis. They couldn't figure it out. One of the surgeons came up to me and they're like, I'm sorry, I let her diabetes mask a lot of these symptoms. Her appendix ruptured and she had to have emergency surgery. So
what
she
the
has a
hell?
scar from the top of her belly button to the top of her pubic bone because they had to go get it. It was under her tailbone.
Oh my God. That's fucking terrible luck for the kid.
Yes, she's had really shitty luck.
Yeah, no kidding. Jesus Christ.
Like, that's not even a lie. She has had the shittiest luck in the last 2 years.
Oh.
So,
What do you think if she could give one of those two things away, do you think she'd say the diabetes or the scar in her belly?
I'm pretty sure she would rather get rid of the diabetes.
Yeah. Okay. I was just wondering. So wait, was this like an emergent thing? Were you like, oh, is she going to die? Because you live near nothing.
Yeah. So we went in and we assumed, hey, maybe this is appendicitis. She was having pain. But once she started throwing up, we're like, okay, this is our first diabetes protocol where we don't really know what we're doing. So we went and started getting fluids and they're like, just looks like she's having some inflamed lymph nodes. They sent us home. And a couple hours later, she brought us right back to the hospital. And then they're like, well, her, blood sugar's off and she's having symptoms, but, we think it's more of the diabetes. So they kept us for 3 days. They got her ketones back in order. We got her blood sugar back in order. She was still in pain, but they sent us home again. They said that, those lymph nodes were inflamed. They called it like mesenteric adenitis or something like that. And and then we came back another.
Could they not spell "we can't figure this out"? Is that what happened?
Yeah. There was no, we don't know shit attitude. They were like, yeah, you'll be fine. She'll grow into it. We're like, what?
She'll grow into her. Wait, she'll grow into the
the abdominal pain. It's something that could be, something she'll have until she's an adult. We're like, why?
Boy, I'll
They're
tell
like,
you. Until I had a wife and then a daughter, I had no idea how quickly, when people don't know what to say when it's about a woman, they just go, "That's a lady thing. You'll grow out of that." Once you have a baby, a lot of that stops happening. Is that your medical opinion? Thank you. I'm not this person, but I do see this. Boy, it's easy to just say, "Oh, that's because you're a girl. You got girl parts," and then they just don't help after that. Like PCOS is an example. Like, this is a real serious problem, and the answer to it is, bad luck on your part, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and I still feel that's how it is with the diabetes. It's like nobody has a clue. I feel like I'm explaining the definition of type 1 diabetes to everybody that asks or comes across her. They'll ask me, how's your daughter? And they're like, does she has type 1 or type 2 again? Tell me again. And I'm like, type 1.
And we
type 1. Let me
talked
give you
about
the
this.
definition.
Yeah. Also, to connect the two things together, it doesn't matter what your A1C is. It doesn't matter if it's 6 or 5 or 8 or 9. If you look like you're trying, a physician goes, "You're doing great. You're doing great." So you tell a person with an 8.5 A1C, "You're doing great." And for 20 years, they're like, "I'm doing great." And then they start having problems. And they go, "I don't understand. The doctor told me I was doing great my whole life." Well, yeah, great for, you or, for the amount of effort I thought you could put into it or the understanding I thought you had. But no one ever says, "Hey, it's an 8.5. I love your effort here. You're doing great. But I bet you if we made a couple of tweaks here and there, maybe brought in a couple more ideas, what if we made this a 7? And then once we get to 7, what if we looked into getting you into the 6s and really try to eliminate the idea of long-term complications for you?" But no, just You're doing great. And that's the end of it. By the way, plenty of doctors who do that stuff, but way too many who don't, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So she, like I said, undiagnosed. So she went and had her surgery and that put her out for a while. because it was major abdominal surgery.
Yeah.
So at that point, she was like, everything and anything in my life has been bad for the last 2 years. And she's like, I don't want to do any sports. It's softball. Softball caused diabetes. Softball caused my appendicitis. I don't want to play softball anymore. And she kind of gave up for a minute. Like, she was like over it. She was over everything, because when we got back from all of that, after trying, all those months, and we were doing really good. And then she had the appendicitis and the surgery, and then having to refigure out how to get her blood sugars under control again.
Right.
Yeah. She was just like, I don't want to. And we're like, you don't want to? She's like, no. We're like, but this girl can't sit still.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you going to do? We actually found a gentleman in Canada that has diabetes, that has we are paying him, but he's been pretty much a mentor for her and been helping us as well, because we wanted her to be active and we wanted her to be busy. And between all the negative that she's had, we wanted her to be positive about stuff. And she finally agreed to play softball again.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're over our heads. I think we're on tournament number 4 for this month.
She's back on to it. The softball didn't give her appendicitis.
Yeah. She's back on. It's fine.
Listen,
life's fine.
I don't understand. What's the magic? What's the magic Canadian that you're working with? What is he like hook her up to a sled and tell her to pull it, and then it's like, see, you can do it. Because I don't understand why they're Canadian and what they're doing. I'm confused.
Right. Okay. So, like I said, we want her to enjoy life as much as normal as possible.
Right.
So we decided, as parents, we have exhausted, the endo, the diabetic educators. We've listened to your podcast. We've done everything that we possibly could on our side as parents. So we had found this guy that could mentor her. He's been type 1 since he was 11, and he's a bodybuilder. And he had, talked about personal training, helping people out. And I spoke to him, and what he's pretty much done for us is give us other ideas, other things to help us focus her diabetes. He's like, because she's so active, our diabetic educators, we bounce back and forth with so many things. Nothing ever gets explained. We struggle. We've had these weird drops during softball that we can't get an answer for. So we reached out to somebody that
it's active insulin, by the way. It's active insulin if she's dropping during softball, I would imagine.
Yes. Yeah. We found out.
Yeah.
Thanks, to everything. He helped explain it, I guess.
Are you telling me that your 10-year-old has a Canadian life coach?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, very much so. That is exactly what it is.
I see.
She has a coach, and when we have questions that are just, like, hey, what do you think about this? He's like, well, it sounds like she's just very insulin sensitive. Let's, test this out. Let's see what other things we can do to help, make this
I didn't
better
know this
for her.
was the thing. Can I be a life coach?
Well, if you have information, I'm assuming. So I think you're life coaching just in a broader spectrum already.
Yeah, I might be doing it already. You might be right. But, I mean, after I'm done with the podcast, can I be or actually, could we just turn it into a pot? Or have I already turned it into a pot? Oh, it's hard to know. This is such a meta moment for me.
Yeah, but no, it is true. She literally does. She has a life coach that is diabetic, that is a, bodybuilding, pro carb, all the things that you talk about, but he is MDI.
And he takes
MDI
PayPal
for a long time.
Nice. I should take PayPal. Okay, no, hold on a second. This is very cool. I don't know how you found this, and I don't promote coaching through my stuff. So just because I can never know who's the good one and who's the bad one, or I would just ask you the person's name. But anyway, listen, if this sounds exciting to you, just Google Canadian yoked diabetes life coach. I'm sure you'll find the person.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, I just tumbled down a rabbit hole in my own mind. I was like, people in my own life, people come to me all the time. They have since I was younger. And they're like, here are my problems. What do you think? And then I'd be like, oh, I would do this and this. I can remember one of my earliest life coaching moments, I guess. I was probably 20. And this younger kid, 17, this is going to sound crazy to people, but ATM machines had just started becoming a thing. So depending on where you live in the world, Mac machines, ATMs, but, money access where you can go stick a card in a wall and money flies out of it. I know you're all like, yeah, we know what that is, but I'm trying to tell you that I once lived in a world where that didn't exist. So you're even like, holy shit, how old are you? But when they came out, people had problems with they were taking too much money out of the bank. Like it was almost like a compulsive thing. And
Mm-hmm.
this young kid, like 17 or 18, he worked at a place where my girlfriend worked. I was picking her up one night and he was complaining to people that he's wasting all of his money. He's going broke. I turned to him and I said, what's happening? He goes, oh, like you see something for a couple bucks and I go to the ATM and I get $5 out. And then before I know it, I'm doing it again and again and again. And I said, oh, okay. I said, how much is a lot of money to you? And he said, $20. And I said, okay, only ever take out $20 from the ATM. And he's like, but then I'll use more money. And I was like, no, you won't. You'll go to the ATM less frequently because it'll stop you. And like a couple months later, he came back to me and he was like, hey man, I've been saving all kinds of money because I took your advice about the ATM thing. And I was like, cool. Like, I didn't really care. I was like, whatever. Like, I just love talking. And I was like, yeah, that's great, man. But then I realized I started looking at it. People come to me with their like, dating issues or they want to talk about money. They want to talk about the world. And they were always asking me what I thought. And so just now I thought, oh, maybe I could do that as a retirement thing. That sounds great. Like I could make some extra money, being somebody's Canadian, like friend. And I'll pretend to be in Canada. I'll hang up like a maple leaf behind me or something. Because Canadians people think they're nicer. So I think it'll go over bigger. And I'll go once in a while. But then I realized I'm like, oh my God, maybe that's what the podcast is.
Honestly, you probably are, like I said, just in a broader spectrum.
Jesus,
and
I'm a health
this
coach.
gentleman, he really, I guess you can call him a life coach, but it's like once you've exhausted.
Where else are you going to go when you're out of ideas? Yeah.
And I feel like our diabetic educators, we're at a loss. We're at an impasse. They give us what we need for, prescriptions and paperwork and things like that. But for the day-to-day lifestyle that my daughter is doing and what we want her to continue doing, we needed more information.
Okay.
Excellent. So we found somebody that lived that lifestyle and is helping her.
Oh, I'm serious.
And
like, good for you for
something
looking
positive
and not just sitting around going, oh, woe is me. This sucks. Like, what are we going to do? I'm out of ideas. Oh, well, let's all just jump in the river. We're all a little tired of, being sucky. We want life to be a little bit better. We're tired of, the roller coaster. So we want to be more positive. And if we can't find the information here, we started looking elsewhere, I tell people all the time, like, listen, I think the information about management stuff is in the podcast. But if you're a person who doesn't learn by listening or just can't put two and two together while it's happening, like I get that too. It's not for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'm comfortable saying that the way I present it seems to work for a lot of people, but it's certainly not going to work for everyone. And also I might say something that you're just like, I agreed with that part, but not with that part. And I think that's great too. Like take the information a la carte. And I love that you went to a whole bunch of different sources and pulled together what you needed. That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Way not to give up. Like really, I'm being serious. Like that's wonderful.
Yeah. Like I said, we listened religiously to your podcast. It came up in, conversation. Hey, try this, try this person. Listen to this podcast, see what you think. But it's like, I'm not going to lie. You start talking ratios, things like that. My eyes glass over and I'm like, God, I hate math.
Yeah.
So
I hear you.
So trying to, relate that and figure that out. But I think, again, like you said, I think a life coach is probably the correct terminology for him because, that's what he's doing. And he speaks to her on Zoom. We have a weekly call with him and he asks her, what kind of questions she has. And we try to get as much information of, what he's done or what he's tried to, combat these situations that my brain cannot pull that information. I'm like, I know I heard about that once upon a time, but I can't find that information anymore.
I just want you to be careful because 8 years from now, I don't want her coming to you saying, Mom, I've fallen in love with a 40-year-old Canadian life coach and I'm going to the Great White North. Okay. Very careful.
We don't want that. We don't need that.
I'm teasing. But although if he can take care of her, I guess you're like, well, there's a lot of, he's kind of, if only this guy was 10, knew all this stuff and could grow up with her. This sounds like a really great match.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Wow. What a out of the box way. How did you come up with that idea?
To find somebody?
Yeah.
Well, social media, I guess, technically.
Mm-hmm.
Social media. Just randomly, what? I love our phones. Once you start Googling, searching one thing, it populates all this other information and social media popped up all these different people that were talking about diabetes and the information that he had coincided with a lot of what you had talked about. And the fact that he was MDI and
Saw overlap.
managing it overlapped. And
Yeah.
and that was why we reached out to him.
Isn't that
And
great?
he had posted like, hey, I'm taking on clients. I'm, trying to help them,
It's very cool.
better themselves physically.
I have it's a rule, I guess, that of how I manage some of this stuff, like whether it's in the Facebook group or here, I don't promote health coaches because I don't have the time or the inclination to figure out which ones are good and which ones aren't. And I don't want to be the reason you go give somebody thousands of dollars and then they're like, I got ripped off. You know what I mean? Which I think sometimes people take as, oh, you're just saying that health coaches are all like a ripoff. I'm not saying that at all. I'm sure they're great ones. And it sounds like you may have found one. I have a pretty big responsibility. Like a lot of people hear my voice, right? So I try to be aware of that. And I don't have the infrastructure to set out and figure out which one of these are great and which one of them aren't. And to be perfectly honest, I don't want you having a bad experience and blaming me. So, you know what I mean? Like, so I just don't do it. But then what happens is like a half a dozen times a year, I get yelled at by a health coach. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm like, didn't say you were. Just saying we have a flat rule where you can't be a health coach and be a member of the group. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like now that we're 2 years into it, I'm glad that we didn't start off with a health coach because it gave us time to figure things out ourselves. It was just, now we're to the point where we understand to the best of our ability at this point.
Yeah.
We're only getting so much information from these other sources. What other sources can we pull for her? And as parents, it's like, well, if it costs me money, I'm going to still find somebody that's going to help her. And if it helps her, great.
Cool. Can I ask you what it cost? Would you tell me if I asked you what it cost?
I'm trying to think what it cost.
I'm trying to figure. I'm so interested if you're going to be embarrassed or if you're just going to tell me, if you're going to be like, oh, actually.
No, well, I'm not embarrassed at all.
Okay.
Like I said, as a parent, I'm like, I would pay
for what works.
Everything that I owned, to find anything to help her. So I think I want to say we are doing 4 months and it's like $800.
Okay, I want everyone listening to send me $800 right now. Okay, that's it.
4 months of advice from Scott.
Yeah. And just figure out where I am or whatever. Send me $800 and we'll all call it even. Okay, and that'll be that. I have to tell you something, Erin. If everyone sent me $800 right now, I'd be wealthy. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm just teasing. Please don't send me money. I'm just joking. I want to make sure you're done asking everything you've asked, saying everything you want to say, because I have a question that's outside of our conversation that I want to record. So I don't want to run out of time and you have to go help people.
Okay.
Make sure you've said everything, or is there anything left?
Yeah. No, like I said, we have been in a very dark 2 years. And with my daughter, we're finally feeling that things are getting much better. And, the time frame of this phone call just worked out really well, because when I first set up this call, no, we did not have our Canadian life coach at that point in time. And it was post-surgery. So I was in a very dark, mad, upset place, damn diabetes, damn appendicitis, life is just kind of shitty. To be honest, I'm very positive right now. I'm very happy. She's thriving. And that's the most important thing as a parent, is having her thrive.
I like the quick turnaround.
Having a life coach for her has been great. It's been helpful for us. And all the information that we've gathered from you, it really does help.
Yeah.
But to be positive.
Seriously, very cool that you figured something out and that you went from like where you were when 6 months ago, you're like, I want to be on this podcast because everything sucks and I got to tell people everything sucks. And now you're like, hey, everything doesn't suck as much. And I think, you'll hear me tell people all the time that things get better much more quickly than you imagine. And like, in this moment around diagnosis or while you're trapped in those feelings, you think this is the rest of my life. And all these things that you described about how your son feels and how your daughter feels and what happened to softball and, why is this happening? You think, oh, this is how I'm going to feel forever. But it's just not true. Like I always tell people a year from now, you're going to look back and think, I don't even recognize myself anymore. And you got to that. So that's very cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Really excellent. So now here's my question. You work in a dental office?
I do.
You don't have to say where. Do you clean teeth, or are you an assistant, or are you a dentist?
I'm a dental hygienist, so I clean teeth.
Perfect. I'm going to ask you a question, and you answer me honestly if you can.
Okay.
Is it a scam when you clean my teeth? Because here's what it feels like happens. It feels like you take a spear and you jam it down between my tooth and my gum line and you go, oh, it's bleeding. You're going to need trays. Because everyone thinks, yeah, well, it's fucking bleeding because you just poked me with a needle. And then they say things like, there's a gap here. This one's a 3. This one's a 2. We just don't want any 5s. Oh, there's a bleeder, but it's a 4. But you're saying that while you're poking me with a sharp piece of metal. Are you just trying are you trying to steal my money and get a deep cleaning because the insurance doesn't pay for it and you want a little cash? Go ahead and tell me the truth.
That's hilarious. So to be honest, I am not that kind of hygienist. I don't like to diagnose that way. But to tell you the truth, the little probe that we use is blunted. So it's not sharp. It's not a spear. So if you are bleeding, that means that you do have inflammation underneath your gum line. And I tell people, think of it like an ulcer. It's fine until you start touching it or rubbing it. And that's when it bleeds. So it's incognito until I start rubbing on it is technically what I do.
I love that you said rubbing on it. That was very creepy. Erin's like, until I start rubbing on your mouth and then you'll know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, wait. Hold on. Wait. There's people have a lot of questions here. I was just talking about this with the editor the other day. He's listening to it now going, oh my God, we did talk about that months ago. That's hilarious. What about the tray? Like what, hold on. What is the inflammation a sign of besides inflammation? Is it a sign of anything else?
So it's just a sign that you have pretty much a bacterial overgrowth underneath your gum line and that it causes infection and that infection causes bleeding. So bleeding is an indicator of infection or irritation.
And is that going to kill me? Because they make it sound like I'm going to have a heart attack because of it.
So just like you talk about with diabetes, it's not going to kill you tomorrow, but long-term you will have complications. Yes.
I'm going to die because I have a 4 pocket in my tooth by my molar. I got you. Now, and brushing doesn't help it. Does flossing?
Flossing, water picking. Yes, that's about the only thing. And getting your teeth cleaned is the only thing that gets that bacteria out of there.
Okay. And what about when they charge me $1 million to make a mold of my mouth and say squirt some gel in this and then stick it in and hold it in there for 10 minutes and use your trays or whatever? Is that a thing you sell or is that a scam?
I personally don't do those. I've heard about them. So I couldn't tell you exactly when it comes to that, but I hate to tell you, dentistry is a business too, and everything is expensive.
Now, I don't mind it being expensive if it helps me. I don't want to have a heart attack. But like I'm saying, are the trays are they snake oil or do you think they really do something?
I think they use peroxide in them, and peroxide helps to oxidize the bacteria. And in that aspect, it does help.
I don't love your answer. Okay. I feel like if I stop this recording, you're going to be like, Scott, go get your money back for those trays. Break the front window if you have to. They owe you. But I feel like you don't want to say it now. So the real answer is, I mean, I want to be clear. I do brush my teeth, but brush, floss, and water pick. Like I should jam like down the side with some, like when I get the deep cleaning, do you do the deep cleaning with the water? Do you do that?
I do, but just a water pick, like the ones that you see at the store that just are that stream of water, just flushing that underneath there brings that oxygen into those pockets. And with the oxygen in the pockets, it helps decrease those bacteria.
Got it. My last question, because you do have to go help somebody right now at work. Why do dental hygienists talk to me while they're in my mouth?
Because you're a captive audience and we don't have anybody else to talk to. And because we say everything exact same all the time, like it feels like scripted. I tell everybody to floss. I tell everybody to brush. I tell them kind of nice to have somebody that doesn't talk back to you. You just talk to them.
So you're not expecting me to reply?
No.
Oh, all right.
Unless it's a direct, like, are you flossing? And then wait for my fingers to leave your mouth and then please reply. But if I'm just telling you about my kid or something like that, a little, little eye contact or a little head nod works just fine.
Okay.
And I'm like, hey, they're listening to me.
I feel a lot of pressure in that situation. I'm like, this is a deep question. I have answers. Hold on a second. Oh, that's why I'm in there so long. All right. I'm just going to shut up next time. Okay. Erin, thank you. Go clean someone's teeth.
All right, Scott. Thank you so much.
Take care. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This episode of the Juicebox Podcast was sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get started today with US Med. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com. Thanks for tuning in today, and thanks to Medtronic Diabetes for sponsoring this episode. We've been talking about Medtronic's MiniMed 780G system today, an automated insulin delivery system that helps make diabetes management easier day and night. Whether it's their meal detection technology or the Medtronic extended infusion set, it all comes together to simplify life with diabetes. Go find out more at my link, medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox. Hey, you listened all the way to the end. You might want to know more about the Juicebox Podcast. If you do, go to juiceboxpodcast.com, scroll down to the bottom, and subscribe to the Juicebox Podcast newsletter. Each week, you'll get a rundown of the shows from the past week, just in case you missed something and you think, oh, I would have loved that. Now I know. If you're ready to level up your diabetes care, the Diabetes Pro Tip series from the Juicebox Podcast focuses on simple strategies for living well with type 1. The Pro Tip episodes contain easy-to-understand concepts that will increase your knowledge of how insulin works, and so much more. My daughter has had an A1C between 5.2 and 6.4 since 2014 with zero diet restrictions, and some of those years include her in college. This information works for children, adults, and for the newly diagnosed, and for those who have been struggling for years. Go to juiceboxpodcast.com and click on Diabetes Pro Tip in the menu, or head over to episode 1000 of the Juicebox Podcast to get started today with the episode Newly Diagnosed or Starting Over. And then continue right on to episode 1025. That's the entire Pro Tip series, episode 1000 to 1025. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Hey, what's up, everybody? If you've noticed that the podcast sounds better, and you're thinking, like, how does that happen? What you're hearing is Rob at Wrong Way Recording doing his magic to these files. So if you want him to do his magic to you, wrongwayrecording.com. You got a podcast? You want somebody to edit it? You want Rob.